楽園なんてきっとどこにもありはしない。世界の果てには何もないんだ。どこまで歩いても同じ道が続いてるだけ。それなのになぜこんなにも衝動に駆られるんだ。誰かの声がする。楽園を目指せ。
A vast post-apocalyptic wasteland covered in snow, filled only by the ruins of once technologically advanced cities. Struggling refugees that inhabit the decaying shells of former havens of industrialization. Monumental dystopian buildings that tower over an oppressed population ruled by hedonistic nobles. From a purely aesthetic standpoint, Wolf's Rain's setting might come off as a fairly standard post-apocalyptic or dystopian background, similar to many other sci-fi stories that came before it. But perhaps the most interesting thing that sets it apart from other similar stories are its main characters. Disguised among the unknowing inhabitants of the cities, we find wolves, mythical animals thought to be extinct, symbols of a world that has been long lost to time. In this aspect, Wolf's Rain reveals itself to be a story that very much draws inspiration from the history of the Japanese wolves, and their place in the nation's cultural imagination. To better understand the themes and motifs that make up the narrative of Wolf's Rain, we'll first dive into Japan's past to understand the significance of the wolf as a symbol. In ancient Japan, people imagined the wolf as a deity associated with the uncertainty and dangers of the outside world, a world where barely anyone would venture alone. Contrasted with the dangers of the wilderness were the palaces of the great lords, which were seen as bastions of safety. The palaces were associated with the ritualized certainty of court life, much like the cities in Wolf's Rain, where nobles and their subjects take shelter from the perils and uncertainty of life beyond the city walls. Wolf's Rain's mythos also closely resembles an origin story told by the Ainu people of Hokkaido, according to which the Ainu are descendants of a union between a white wolf and a goddess, reminiscent of the relationship between the white wolf Kiba and the flower maiden Cheza. Likewise, the Ainu also tell stories of wolves that shapeshift into people and live closely with humans. The Ainu saw the wolf as an animal deity that was very much related to humans, but interestingly enough, in other parts of Japan the wolf was seen as an almost antithetical creature to human society, a symbol of wilderness and impermanence. As time passed, the once revered wolves became seen more as a nuisance. Because of frequent attacks on horses and other livestock, in 1701 a Japanese lord introduced the first of many wolf bounties to come. And by 1742, professional wolf hunters were using firearms and poison to exterminate the wild animals. To make matters worse, in 1736 rabies appeared among the dogs in eastern Japan, which shortly after spread to the wolf population, turning some wolves from simple horse predators to man-killers. This, coupled with the rapid industrialization and deforestation of the wolf's habitat during the Meiji period, forced the animals into conflict with humans. Killing wolves became a national policy under the Meiji Restoration, and within one generation the Japanese wolf was extinct, with the last documented wolf being captured and killed in 1905. By bearing in mind the Japanese wolf's history, we can better understand the symbolism of this intriguing animal within the context of Wolf's Rain's story. Wolves are seen by some as a threat to be exterminated, a natural enemy to mankind. But at the same time, the wolves also possess some characteristics that make them very similar to humans. They also seem to be symbols that represent something that humans have lost long ago, an innate drive to journey across the perilous wasteland in search of a potentially better life. The narrative of Wolf's Rain is very much built on such conflicting dualities. The first duality we are going to explore is the contrast between the city and the wasteland. Life in the cities is far from being perfect, but compared to the hardships of the outside world, it at least offers some sense of stability to its inhabitants. The cities are safe havens from the harshness of the endless wasteland that covers the outside world. But life in the city is characterized by a bargain sense of safety. The citizens are allowed to go on with their daily lives as long as they don't question the authority of the nobles and obey the rules set by their masters. Very much reminiscent of the wolves in Japanese folklore, in Wolf's Reign, the mythical animals reveal themselves to be antithetical opposites to the city dwellers. Symbols of an uncompromising drive to leave comfort and safety behind and venture through hardship and into the unknown in search of a different way of life. The search for paradise is the driving force that motivates our main characters to start their journey through the harsh wasteland. But even the proud wolves are not immune to the allure and slim comfort that the city offers. Before meeting Kiba, Tsume, Hige and Toboe all live their lives in Freeze City without any purpose, just trying to survive from day to day. Kiba is the one that reignites the spark that pushes the other wolves to start their journey towards paradise. In this sense, the white wolf Kiba represents the divine wolves from myths and legends. He is the embodiment of the wild and free spirit that was once part of wolves and humans alike. Meanwhile, the wolves that have accepted life under human society are likened to dogs that have traded their freedom for safety. In episode 5, our protagonists come across a pack of wolves that have given up on searching for paradise, and have instead resigned to doing menial work for the humans in exchange for food.
おい、どうした？楽園行きはやめたのか？
あんたたちはここで一体何をしてるんだ？
なんだ？
どうして楽園に行けなかったのかわかるよ。あんたたちは犬だ。
Just like the wolf is a symbol of uncompromising freedom, the dog becomes the representation of the wolf that has repressed its wild nature to serve a master that offers shelter and safety. But regardless of their efforts, none of the wolves truly manage to fit in human society, as seen by the examples of Tsume and Toboe, who both end up accidentally hurting the people close to them. The wolves simply do not belong to the same world as the city dwellers. Their wild nature is bound to reveal itself at some point. This theme is most obviously explored through Blue, as she literally lived most of her life as a dog, unaware that she's also half-wolf. After being awakened by Cheza and having discovered her true nature, Blue can no longer go back to her old life with her master.
何も知らないままならずっと親父さんのそばにいられた。あの子に会わなかったら私はいつまでも変わらずにいられたのに。自分に狼がいるなんて知らなければ。
Interestingly enough, this theme gets explored through the human characters as well. Cher and Hub both lived relatively comfortable lives in Freeze City until they met the wolves, after which they decided to investigate the nobles and their shady dealings. By meeting the wolves, they experience a kind of spiritual awakening that pushes them to question their reality and the purpose of the life they've been living so far.
リボスキー、俺たちはオオカム教のおかげでこうしてそれなりの暮らしをさせてもらってる。どうしたんだ一体。厄介ごとには極力関わり合いにならないのがお前のポリシーじゃなかったのか？
何かが変わったんだ。俺か、世界か。
Humans are also said to be literally descended from wolves, indicating that to some extent they also inherited the wolf's nature. Therefore, in the context of the show, the wolf also functions as a metaphor for the rejection of momentary comfort for a harder but more fulfilling life. The search for paradise represents just that, the need to find a different way of life, to go beyond the false sense of safety that society offers to those that are willing to obey. Juxtaposed to the wolves we have the nobles, whose nature is antithetical to the drive towards the future that the wolf represents. Once at the forefront of technological and scientific innovation, the nobles have now completely lost interest in the future of their decaying civilization. Rather than facing their uncertain future, the nobles and their followers indulge in a hedonistic and wish-fulfilling lifestyle. They choose to ignore the dying world that surrounds them by finding some semblance of comfort in the routine of their secluded keeps. This idea is also represented through the citizens of Jagara City, who calmly go about their daily routine, ignoring the destruction that has befallen the outside world, and trusting that their master will ensure the continuation of their leisurely lifestyle.
わしらが気にしても始まらない。大切なのは日々の暮らしさ。
その暮らしが永遠に続くとでも思ってるの？
なぜ続かないと思う？
あなた外にいたなら知ってるでしょ？世界が今どうなっているか。
悪夢のようだったな。
夢じゃないわ、現実よ。
あんたらもここで暮らしていれば気にならなくなるさ。何もかもね。
In the legends it is told that if the wolves open the gates to paradise, it will bring about the end of the world. If we look at this statement from a metaphorical standpoint, we can see that the wolves also represent revolutionary figures looking to usher in a new age to the world by cutting ties with its past, while the nobles want to preserve it at all costs. Both of these contrasting worldviews are represented by the abstract concept of paradise, which holds different meanings for the nobles and the wolves. For the nobles, paradise is a place where time stands still, a place where they can feel at peace forever, never having to worry about the uncertainty of the future.
私たち貴族は生まれた世界を遠く遠く離れ、ただ静かに死んでゆくだけ。ならばこのまま永遠に時間を止めて。
ここはすでに失われた過去を慈しむ場所でも、未来を変えるためにある場所でもない。
作られた楽園、そんなものに未来はない。
The nobles can't go back to their past glory and they have no future, so the best they can hope for is to preserve their current lifestyle in a never-ending moment of bliss, but at the cost of rejecting any kind of progress. The wolves, on the other hand, strive for a better future, despite the uncertainty and the challenges it brings. Striving for the future is presented as an intense emotional challenge, as our protagonists are constantly tempted to stop pursuing paradise to instead live a simpler and safer life. Having lived their lives as dogs, both Blue and Toboe feel nostalgia for the days when they were living simple lives with their loved ones, and contemplate going back to those days. Hige is tempted to stop searching for paradise when he meets Blue because he feels like finding somebody to love is good enough, and Sume has to leave his life as a city dweller behind for a journey through the wasteland with no guaranteed payoff. Kiba is the only wolf that keeps striving for paradise no matter what, but even he at one point almost falls prey to temptation. In episode 19, Kiba's spirit wanders into the Garden of Eternity, a utopian paradise that is very akin to the paradise of the nobles. An idyllic place removed from the real world where there is no scarcity and everyone can seemingly live their lives without any worries. But staying in this false paradise threatens to usher Kiba's spiritual and physical death.
そうよ。ここは楽園なんかじゃない。ここは時間が止まった世界なの。いつかなぜここにいるのかもみんな忘れてしまう。私はもう思い出せないの。
The Garden of Eternity can't really grant freedom to anyone. In fact, those who stay for too long can never go back to the real world. They remain trapped forever in a hedonistic dream, without a purpose and without a future. Just like the paradise of the nobles, the Garden of Eternity is a place where one goes to escape reality instead of coming to terms with it and trying to change it for the better. The only way to get to paradise is to challenge adversity. That's why it isn't a place everyone can reach. Aiming for paradise means leaving the past behind and rejecting any compromises for a simpler life, and all of it to reach an uncertain and undefined goal. In fact, paradise is never defined as anything more than an abstract promise for an undefined future.
楽園に一体何がある？
未来が。
未来？
希望も絶望もない。ただ未来がある。それだけだ。
Is there really a paradise waiting at the end of the road? Will reaching it really usher in a better world? Or is paradise just an idealistic dream someone once had? Either way, the only way to find out is to run toward the future instead of running away from it. Only those that are able to get over the nostalgia of the past and sacrifice immediate comfort in the present can have the unwavering conviction to continuously challenge themselves for a future where, hopefully, true freedom and fulfillment awaits. Although there may not be many that are willing to go so far, as long as there are wolves in the world, there will always be someone ready to answer the voice that calls them to paradise.